Strobe output. Another pretty obvious way to adjust exposure in the scene is to change the output of your strobe. You can turn the power up and you can turn the power down. And the range of stops that you can adjust the power is going to depend on the specific strobe you have. Higher end strobes can have a range of 10 stops of light, where less expensive may only have 5. Now, if I want to change the power of my strobe, I can simply turn it up or turn it down. When you look on a strobe, usually there's some kind of display or readout with a range of numbers. Think of this as the absolute range of output. The highest number you can get to is the most amount of light you can possibly put out, and the bottom, the lowest number, is the lowest amount of light you can put out. So if we continue with the water example, I think of it like this. How big the bucket is the wattage, like how much power could it potentially put out? And then the power output is how much water you put in that bucket. Here's what I want you to know. The numbers that you're going to see, they don't actually represent anything like apertures or what you can set your camera at. Instead, usually what it does mean is that one full increase in a number usually means an increase of a stop or a decrease of a stop in light. Let's take a look. Now we're going to take a look at varying the power output of 3 different light sources. I have a professional level strobe, more of a budget strobe, and a speed light. Now, the key that I want to cover and for us to think about in the beginning is that each of these have different maximum potential light they can give you. So for example, the professional has a 500 watt output. It has a lot more light than, say, a speed light. How I like to think about it is kind of like buckets of water, okay? The full bucket is its maximum potential. Well, 500 watt second, the professional, is going to be a really big bucket. And then the next one I have here is 320 watt seconds, a little bit smaller bucket. And then the speed light's even smaller. So although we're going to be varying the power on them, they have different maximum potential for the most light they can possibly output. When you look at these light sources, you have the ability to change the output. Now, usually what you have is you've got a range of stops. So from the highest output to the lowest output, how many different stops of light are there? And this depends on the strobe. More expensive strobes might have 10 stops different from the highest output to the lowest output. Whereas a less expensive strobe or speed lights, we're gonna have a slightly narrower range. Let's take a look and see the ability to control the power that we have in my professional ProPhoto strobe. Now, when you look at it here, the top number is 10. And the lowest number is 4. These numbers do not indicate apertures or a certain exposure setting or anything like that. Simply what it means is 10 is the highest output you can possibly give you. So for this strobe, that's 500 watt seconds of power. Now the numbers that do exist in there, they do actually mean something. If I go from 10 to 9, that is a change of 1 stop of light. So from the highest power to 9, I'm actually cutting the light in half, changing it by 1 stop. Now that's how it works on this ProPhoto strobe. But then over here on my DigiBee, my budget strobe, how it works is you'll have a readout of 0, 0, which means this is at its full power. And then I can dial down by full stops all the way down to -6. So I have a 6 stop range of output for this particular strobe. Now, if you noticed between these two, I have the power to change them in tenths of a stop. So it's not just like I have to increase or decrease the power by full stops every time. I have 0.1 or tenths of a stop. This is going to vary depending on your strobe. That's why you need to do a little research. Some might actually be analog with dials on the back of the strobe. Others are going to be digital, and they'll vary by different degrees. Now, if we come over to our speed light, although we can change the power by range, it actually, the way that you read the power output completely changes. So if I come over to my speed light in its manual setting, it starts off at full power of 1/1. So 1/1 full power. And then I can dial it down all the way to 1/128th power. So that's the range of output that I have. And I can actually change the range of output by 1/3 of a stop from full power all the way down. So when you're changing the power output of your light source, you need to do your research so you can figure out A, what wattage you have, so you know how much power potential you actually have there, and then also do your research to figure out what these numbers and settings actually mean. So you are going to have to do your research. You're going to have to look up for the particular light source you have, what's the potential highest output, the wattage, and then from there, what all of these dials and indicators actually mean for your light source.